Welcome. Today is Thursday, November 21st, 2024. It is 3 p.m. We are in the council chambers of the Township of Greater Madawaska. I'd like to call the meeting to order. Resolution, please.
Be it resolved that the Council of the Township of Greater Madawaska calls to order the November 21st, 2024 regular council meeting at 3 p.m.
Thank you. Do we have a mover? Councillor Tripp, Councillor Levesque, all in favor? That's so carried. Please stand for O Canada. Thank you. Please be seated. As we gather in chambers, I would like to acknowledge on behalf of council and our community that we are meeting on the unceded traditional territory of the Algonquin people. We would like to thank the Algonquin people and express our respect and support for their rich history, and we are extremely grateful for their many and continued displays of friendship. We'd also like to thank all generations of people who have taken care of this land for thousands of years. Thank you, Miigwech. Moving on to 4.1, approval of agenda additions and deletions. Resolution, please.
That the agenda of the council meeting of November 21st, 2024 be approved as presented.
Do we have a mover? Councillor Thompson, second by Councillor Popke. You've had time to review it. All in favor? And it's so carried. Thank you. 5.1, approval of minutes. Resolution, please.
Be it resolved that the following minutes are approved by council: October 17th, 2024 regular council meeting, October 31st, 2024 special council meeting, November 13th, 2024 special council meeting, and November 14th, 2024 public meeting.
Thank you. Do we have a mover? Councillor Levesque, second by Councillor Tripp. They're all included within our package. Any questions, concerns? No? All in favor? That's so carried. Thank you. 5.2, accept the minutes. Resolution, please.
Be it resolved that the following minutes are accepted by council: September 24th, 2024 Recreation and Culture Committee.
Thank you. Do we have a mover? Councillor Thompson, second by Councillor Levesque. We've had opportunity to review them. All in favor? That is so carried. Thank you. Section 6, declaration of pecuniary interest or the general nature thereof. Councillor Tripp.
Thank you, Chair. Mayor, I, Councillor Rob Tripp, declare a pecuniary interest on the regular council agenda of November 21st, 2024, item number 8.1, item titled OPP Detachment 2025 Budget, for the following reasons. I sit as chair of the Renfrew and Area OPP Detachment Board.
Thank you. Documentation has been signed. Thank you. And any other declaration of pecuniary interests? There are none seen. Thank you. Now on to section 7, Mayor's address. Since our last regular council meeting, I have represented the township at 13 meetings, 7 community events, and I'd like to point out on Friday, November 8th, I attended the Bonnechere Valley First Nations Cultural Center, located at the MyFM Center in Renfrew. I took part of a medicine wheel exercise, or the Wheel of Life exercise, led by Elder Pat Aird. The day was full of teachings and learnings, and it was extremely enlightening. And if you ever get a chance to get up to see the Cultural Center, I don't know whether they've actually had their official opening yet, but when it does, get there and see it. It's quite impressive. On Sunday, November 10th, I had the privilege of emceeing the Calabogie Remembrance Day ceremony. As always, it was well attended and a magnificent tribute to all who have served and those that have continued to serve our Canadian citizens. I would like to thank the organizer once again for putting together. Special thank you to Mr. John Watt for heading the organization and putting together that day. I'd also like to express my gratitude for members of Garrison Petawawa for their attendance. And I'd be remiss not to mention the Calabogie Lions Club and their contribution for putting on the informal event that took place afterwards. I'd also like to mention that after my learning and teaching on November 8th, I incorporated some of the learnings from that day with the Bonnechere Valley First Nations into my address on the event for that day. On Tuesday, November 19th, I had the privilege of attending Garrison Petawawa under the gracious invitation of Colonel Jason Guinea, the commander of the garrison, to observe his troops in live fire exercise training prior to their deployment overseas that will take place in June of this year. That concludes my address. We will now move on to section 8.1, OPP Detachment Board 2025 budget with board representative John Proctor, and Councillor Tripp will be leaving the room. Thank you. Mr. Proctor, if you'd like to have a seat there. Thank you. If you just need to hit the button to turn the green light on, and
There we go.
there you go. Well, thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me. I know the budget's been shared. I know there've been a number of different conversations, but I'll kick off a couple of things. And first off is my background. This isn't my first board. I'm on a number of boards, from the Ottawa Airport to the Ottawa Board of Trade. So board governance is a thing, and I'm the community representative. I know my resume might have passed your desks at some point, so thank you for putting me on. This is a very interesting board because it's ugly. And I'm going to be very blunt because that's where I think needs to be done. So everything's a bit of a mess. The legislation was rushed into place. The role of the board hasn't really come to be yet. We're still trying to, we're trying to put the wheels and the engines on this plane. It hasn't actually taken off. It's actually not doing what it's supposed to do, which is govern the OPP. And by that I mean the board is supposed to set strategic direction for the OPP detachment. This is new for the OPP. So they're also coming to terms with this cultural shift, which is this Community Policing and Community Safety and Policing Act, the CSPA. So it's all new. Everyone's kind of working out where it fits. And on top of that, the province has said, hey, we're going to put these boards on, but you, the municipalities, have to fund this. So it's also new. And particularly when you look at the money that the OPP is asking for with their increases, there is a bit of a going on. So I get all of that, and I think it's worth setting the tone for this conversation, which is the board itself recognizes all of that. However, we've been legislated and said, you need to put a budget together. So trying to do that with the context. Now, the other thing, and Rob has stepped out, and I'm finding this with a lot of the other representatives, and this is kind of a nuanced thing that the councillors are struggling with a bit, is when they're on the board, they're a board member. They're not a council member. They actually have to take their council hat off and be a board member, much like you do in a corporation, right? They have a fiduciary duty to the organization, not to the shareholders. I know you watch US movies and they all say the board must act in the way of the shareholders. Canada's different. Canadian boards, you act in the interests of the organization, shareholders second. In the US, it's shareholders first, organization second, which is what you see in all the movies. So we're different. So these councillors have become board members, and for them it's a shift. I can remember, and I'll give you an example of the shock, when I said, we're responsible for salaries. They're like, what? I said, under the legal architect of Canada, as a board member, if somebody who works at an organization doesn't get paid, the board members are responsible for their salaries. That's the law. They're like, so when do we get D&O insurance? So we now have insurance, so even that's being set up. But I wanted to set the tone just because that's the context the board is struggling with in putting this together. So the budget, and a lot of work was done by Rob and Jason from Renfrew and myself in terms of putting the budget together, is a guesstimate, right? To be completely blunt, if you look at this, there's 10K in there for, we're not quite sure how this is going to work, 10K, and there's a whole bunch of other budget line items in there, which I can go through line by line, but I'd set the tone on that to say, this really is an estimate. And one thing we're very conscious of is saying, we may be a lot less going forward because you're having to build something. Once we built it, it's less. So for instance, there's an administrative role. And I'd say it's not really administrative, it's almost board secretary, because you've got to build all the policies. And this is where I get frustrated to saying, well, hold on. We got so many, how many other new police boards are there all trying to build the same policies and the province couldn't say, here's your toolkit, right, cut and paste. I can use ChatGPT like the best of them, which is how I built the current two policies we have. One is sexual harassment, which we have to have insurance. The other one is signing authority. ChatGPT is really good at that stuff, right, if you ask it nicely. So again, we've got those running. And again, the fact that we haven't got this toolkit for the province blows my mind, because what a waste of money, asking each board to do it independently. So, but what's happening is we're leaning ahead. And we're seen as probably in the top 25% of police boards. Some of them haven't met. And if you think about what we're doing we've got 7 municipalities, although Whitewater and Admonstone Bromley have 2 police boards, but they only get representation at 1 because the detachments, they have 2 detachments covering their geographic areas, but they only get representation on 1 police board. So again, this highlights that the acts probably were rushed into being, but they are in being, so we're stuck with them. But really for that talks about the complexity, so there's putting this together. So what we've done is try and knit this together from the start, trying to be as cost effective as possible. And I'm going to say is, the idea is within the first 6 months, we should have a good idea of, actually we can give some of this money back, right? Or actually we'll just hold on to it, but next year it'll be a lot cheaper because we're going to hold money back and go for it. So we've done the best we can with what we've got is kind of where I'm getting to. And it really is a start from scratch. So, you know, we need a degree of independence. And I put that out there because if you think about it, every representative, so in your case, Rob, is going to come to this board and say, we see this as the strategy we need in our township for policing. And is it drugs? Is it, you know, trying to say, you know, domestic violence, right? What are the main things that OPP getting called out that we'd like them to focus on? And are we getting the calls? And if you actually look at the detachment, right, we've got a lot of missing roles, right? The detachment, they're short of bodies, the cars are underutilized, et cetera, et cetera. There's a whole bunch of things that we, the board, need to try and get into understand and then govern properly. We haven't even touched that yet, right? We're still trying to put the wheels and the wings on this thing to try and see if it'll fly. And that's where we're at. So go through the budget. So, you know, if I just go through the macro point, the honorariums are something, again, of really sort of basic statements. You know, they're small. There are other boards that are around $300 honorariums. We've gone down to the base. It's not legislated, right? It will be for the 2 provinces, and the legislation says the 2 province representatives who have yet to be nominated have to be paid. The legislation says should be paid to everybody else, including me, and the answer is you kind of get what you pay for, right? That's the way, I mean, a lot of not-for-profit boards struggle with that, but you kind of get, if you give people nothing, why would they show up? Right, just a token of here's your fuel, and here's, you know, your ability to go and buy lunch afterwards type thing. Again, small as possible. But I also get some townships don't like it, right? Because they've got councillors going, well, hold on, you don't get paid to be on the transport and committee. You don't get to be paid on this. Why should be this different? And the reason is, it's not a council, it's a board. And it is slightly different in that nuance respect. So there is a nuance there, which is why a lot of the others, nearly every other police board, and we can't find one that hasn't done this, has gone for a very small token honorarium, because it also creates some sort of contractual obligation, right? If we're giving you an honorarium, you need to show up, right? And I know there's a social expectation. That doesn't always work. So that's kind of where we go. Travel was another piece we put in. There are association meetings. There is an association of police boards. There are some things. However, when there's things like, I know there's a municipality association meeting going, there's councillors already going. We're not asking for travel for that. Some of the councillors are going to some of those. But for instance, there's a Zone 2 police board meeting coming next week. The guys are going to carpool and one person will get travel, right? So we're trying to work it as close as we can to make those things cost effective. Governance and operational, yeah, we want whoever comes in and tries to run this. And, you know, there's a staff here running things, putting paperwork, we need someone that's independent from the police boards and to a certain degree independent from all the municipalities, because we need to question what's going on. The moment we have a very, effectively, a volunteer from Renfrew, and some of our conversations are, why is Renfrew being so difficult about X? Well, it's really hard when the clerk from Renfrew is sitting in the meeting with us, right? That's an unfair position to put her in, that we need to create independence. So we're looking to get our own person. The hours they need, yeah, we've kind of put a thumb in the wind and tried to make an estimate because emails responded to them. Do I see that going down? Absolutely. I absolutely see the hours going down, but initially we're trying to start from scratch and say, this person has to build the templates. We need a website, right? Because we're legislated to have a website. We're legislated to put annual reports out. We're legislated to do an assessment on the OPP detachment commander. We have nothing. So again, asking, you know, the councillors or anybody else to do it's unfair. We're asking for effectively a board secretary to come in and build this stuff. Once it's built, I see it becoming a lot easier. And by the way, we have to put our reports on the website. The moment Renfrew's hosting that, but they made it very clear they don't want to. So we have to move those off onto our website, which means we've got to get it built, we've got to get it hosted, and all these things, which again, we would see this person doing. So that's kind of the governance piece on the last piece, and then admin supplies. So we've tried to keep it as small as we can. Now, the other thing that's become the huge, hot, burning mess on the side of the desk is, how is this apportioned to the townships? The OPP is apportioned by headcount, basically. We wish the legislation had said that too. It doesn't. The legislation actually says it will be apportioned equally unless the townships can come together to another model they all agree to. So if you look at, and again, Greater Madawaska, I'm going to go with in the middle, but if you look at Horton and Abbotston Bromley, they're going, hell no. Why should we be paying exactly the same as Renfrew and Arnprior? That's just not fair. And we had representation from the mayor of Abbotston Bromley today saying exactly that, with numerous spreadsheets proving his point. We agree. We absolutely agree that we don't think that seems right as a board. However, the legislation says we'll be apportioned equally unless they can agree. So unless the townships can, the 7 municipalities can sit down and say, we are going to follow the OPP model, which is, I'm going to go with makes sense to me. Why would the board have a different model of apportioning costs than the OPP? Doesn't, you know, from a governance perspective, doesn't make sense. We should be apportioned the same way as the OPP are, but that's not what the legislation says. We don't like it, so we want to go back and argue that to the province. But for now, this is what we got. So one of the suggestions from the mayor of Abbotston Bromley was he would like to put all the municipalities to get together and have that conversation. Take us out of it, because actually we don't decide. The board actually doesn't get a vote on that. We either go with what the legislation says or what the municipalities tell us, how they want that apportioned. We don't get a vote. So, but we very much lean into that model of funding along the OPP, so by effectively headcount, and go from there. And as I said, then we built a contingency in the bottom, which is less than 10%. And again, ideally, we don't touch it. And for 2026, we've still got contingency, so we don't need more contingency, so that's it. And then we reduce ours. The main thing here is, and I'll sort of saying, we need to be very transparent. So I'm very conscious of previous police boards, lack of transparency. This is why the province has made some changes. We want to be able to give the reports of where the money is. We also, at the 6 months, want to give a full similar feedback of saying, we haven't spent as much as we thought we did, therefore we can start cutting down, or we thought we are where we thought we are, but we still don't see we can still see cuts coming in. Yeah, we don't use much in 2026. We will have a much better idea. So the aim is to be as transparent as we can be, right? Everyone has representatives from municipalities on the board, so we should be able to give that to you. And again, the aim is to be fully transparent in all financial statements, because that's just good business in that respect. So that's kind of a brief sort of overview, and I'll open it up to any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Proctor. Any questions, comments, concerns from council? Councillor Thompson.
So we're working on our budgets for next year. What's our deadline? When are we going to know the model, the financial model? When are we going to, how's that process going to be?
So we have pushed this out. We're kind of dependent on the municipalities to tell us. The problem is there is a default setting, which is unless you agree, it goes to equal billing. And that's legislated.
And then currently, we're aware of this, and this was coming forward, so your draft budget already considers this.
Thank you, Councillor Thompson.
Considers either or?
Right now, it's considering the proposals that's come forward with the equal billing, and then with the budget that's been proposed. There is a motion that is on the agenda for tonight, and there's the ability to separate them into two different topics, as we're talking about here, where there's an ability to separate that council is approving a budget, but then there's another component that we vote differently on, and we could separate into another motion that council approves the equal billing. So that could be also a consideration for council.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments, concerns from council? Councillor Levesque? Councillor Levesque's on Zoom. Okay.
It's also to your side.
Thank you for that report. Just a couple of questions, and it may be too late in the process now, but you referred to the website and other components that are going to have to be running independently of the OPP and of the other boards as well, I believe. Is that correct?
Yes, it is. Yeah.
So every single board is going to have to create their own websites, create their own document repositories, et cetera, et cetera. Yes.
Okay. This is how inefficient that is. You've hit the nail on the head.
So given that, and I saw the budget, it's actually would actually concern me to be independent with a lower budget for the simple fact that there's security concerns that I would be raising, which I would assume the OPP, a larger organization, would already have that in place. Has that been raised as a concern?
Again, from the data, if I look at what we will be touching, I mean, when you say security concerns, if you mean around sort of the data we'd have, there wouldn't be anything in terms of operational policing on our website. That's not our role. So in terms of what would be on there, it would be our reports, our assessments, our strategy pieces, but certainly not into operational policing, and certainly nothing that would be considered sort of classified or even protected B or C.
Okay, thank you. And in terms of branding or centralization, are the boards getting together at all in terms of design? Not
design, but even this good point on branding. One of the things is name. We're not the Renfrew OPP. And I know there's a history here because Renfrew used to have its police service. So that's part of the history here. But one of the things we are very keen to look at is what should this name be? And that will also flow down to the detachment possibly. Is it the Bon Cher Valley OPP, right? Is it the Ancient Rivers OPP? I don't know. We've got a lot of, but this is where it's a blank sheet. And this is where we, again, Jeff, to your point about, naming and branding, we want to try and get it right. Because once you start and we start doing bank accounts and incorporating, you kind of stuck with the brand and the name. So we can get it right at the front end and, make it, and I'm going to be not rude, but say less Renfrew-centric, a broader representing of the 7 municipalities and the geographic area it represents. I think it gets more buy-in. I think it's better off for people to recognize what it is. So your branding's kind of an interesting point because we haven't even solved that puzzle of the name. It's something we've got. I think one councillor on the board has got a list of 8 potentials and she wants to send it all around. I think that's a great conversation, but I think I'd love it to come back to the municipalities to say, what do you think? Right? I think getting that buy-in of the name should represent the area that we cover is actually really important.
Thank you. Just two other questions, both finance related. In the funding provided for the professional fees, does that include accounting in terms of an audit? And will that audit be part of the report back to the municipalities?
Yes, it does. Yeah, there will need to be, audited reports, but this comes back to sort of, general, bookkeeping and an audit response, so we can make sure the money flows. And even, the first two policies got written. One was a harassment policy, and the other was financial signing authority. So again, get the sort of coming out of the block strong on some key pieces there. But yeah, we will need to be audited, and that audit needs to come back to the municipalities, because if you put money in, you need to know where it's gone.
Thank you. In terms of cell phone compensation, the one question, it just listed the incumbents, quote unquote, the incumbents, but it didn't highlight anybody who is already getting compensation from any other organizations that are currently reporting to. Does that take that into account, or does everybody get the same stipend? And if they get covered by something else, that's just the way it is, and they're not considered double dipping?
Yeah, no, the cell phone's really for the whoever the admin person we bring on is. That's the aim for them. It's not for the board members at all. Like I'm not going to go around and ask my cell phone to be covered. I think my Bell bill is good enough. So I don't think we're there. It's really for the admin person, because they will be the main point of contact. I mean, the moment the clerk of Renfrew's taking emails, building the board packages. A lot of the emails go to Councillor Tripp here. He gets them, right? But that's not his job. We need somebody whose job it is to answer the emails and pick up the phone, etc. And there's certain coordination of events, etc. So it's really for with this board secretary or administrator that we bring on. That's the cell phone we'd cover, not for the individuals on the board.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments, concerns from council? None? Okay. Just getting back to the remuneration side of it, in the act says, as appointed by Lieutenant Governor, that's covered. But then in section 3.7, it says members of the OPP Detachment Board shall also be entitled to remuneration as approved by council. Need some clarity around that. Is that the individual councils that they're representing?
This is where it's not clear, right? And this is the challenge we have is, is it each individual council has to vote on this? And this is how we read it, is these budgets have to be approved by council, which would have remuneration in it. So that's how we've interpreted it, and it seems to be how most of the other police boards have it, but it's not bad, it's not well written. So it's not clear, but that is how we've interpreted it, is we put this together with an remuneration, you would vote on it, which is your approval for that remuneration.
Okay, yeah, just throwing that out there, because there's quite possibly that some councils could say, no, I don't like this remuneration. This is what I believe we should be paying our representative. So within the budget itself, it could drastically change by municipality.
Yeah, and certainly a number of board members were not happy that any remuneration should be given. But again, if I look at, so Edmundston probably had its own police board when they had their own police services. Nobody on that police board got remuneration. Renfrew Police Board got remuneration. So even at that level, you've got, difference of opinions on how that should be. And certainly I know that certainly one board member has said, if any money I get, I'm going to give it back to my township, right, in terms of charitable donation or something. So they're all approaching this slightly different, but they're all kind of also stuck between this is what the legislation says, something should be done. So I would very, open and say it's not a unified board in terms of how that should be solved, but they're all trying to do the best we can. I think, you heard me earlier say, I think legislation 2.0 needs to be a lot better, but we're working under 1.0 at the moment, and we've got to deal with its imperfections.
Thank you. Now also going to the shared costing model. So my understanding is within the legislation, it says it shall be a equally shared costing model,
yep,
unless the town or municipalities can come up to another agreement.
Yes.
So if we have one, maybe two municipalities that say, we only want shared equally, then that's almost like a veto for them, because it's not like a 2/3 vote like in any other council or any other legislation or any provincial or federal, where usually 2/3 is the deciding factor. But this is if one township, one municipality disagrees and no other alternatives can be brought forward, then it would be provincially mandated as a shared.
Yes, that's how we've read this as well.
Okay.
We don't like it either.
Okay. That's the way
No,
I interpreted
you're-
it, and I just wanted to clarify
Yeah,
that.
no, I concur.
All righty, is there any other questions of Mr. Proctor today? None? Jeff, you good? Okay, getting a thumbs up.
Got a thumbs up?
All right, well, thank you so much for your presentation, and do we have a resolution?
We do have a resolution. So we have a resolution currently that is set up for both, where it's approving the budget and the billing model. And so if council's good with it being together, I can put it up together, I guess is more of my question.
If it's up together, how do we do a yay or nay vote on the two?
That's why. So I'm asking you if you want to separate the billing model versus,
I think I believe that we should separate the billing models out. I'll do a quick head nod around the table. It looks like that's consensus.
so that the council of the Township of Greater Madawaska approve the 2025 budget of the Renfrew and Area OPP Detachment Board in the amount of $114,644.
Do we have a mover? Councillor Thompson, second by Councillor Levesque. And I think we just had all our background. I don't think there's anything else to add. All in favor to approve the budget? That is carried. And the second?
That the council of the Township of Greater Madawaska consents to an equal billing model apportioned to the 7 municipalities served by the Renfrew and Area OPP Detachment Board.
Do we have a mover? Councillor Popke? We have no, Councillor Levesque is the seconder. Thank you. Any background or discussion from council on this? Councillor Thompson?
So if we approve it for this year, because there's no time to even get into discussions with it, is that something that can be changed later for the next year? I just want to make sure. How serious is this?
Yes, hopefully, and again, it is a bit rushed, but hopefully, again, this year, next year, there's more time for the municipalities to sit down and say, how are we actually going to pay for this thing, right? Because it's unfair. I mean, we have a brief call with the CAO and the treasurers, right? Hey, good luck with this. And now we're asking. So I think it's all been very rushed. So ideally, a lot of this stuff gets ironed out next year. So I'm hoping, A, it'll be smaller next year, and B, it'll be much more proportionally represented across the municipalities next year.
Thank you. Any other questions from council? No. One of the things you just said just twigged me when Councillor Thompson asked her question about possibly getting it changed. There was a key word there, hopefully. There is no guarantee that the province will allow them to reformat it. There's that issue as well. So, and I think, like, if I look at, for ourselves, the difference between the equal share to proportional is approximately, I believe it's around $1,600 or maybe $1,500 for us. For, I believe, Admast and Bromley, it's an extra $8,000 for them. And where Arnprior and Renfrew have considerable, I think three of the municipalities would have considerable savings in this model. So for us, I say it's $1,500 to $1,600. I can't remember the exact number. But for some of the other townships, it's very, very large on them. It's going to really affect them. My personal opinion on this, I would like to see, I'm not in favor of the shared service model, the way it is, the equal shared. And I think for myself, I'd like to see it go back to force the province into an arbitration situation myself. No other, not really a question, just giving you my thoughts. And after me saying that, is there any other discussion or questions from council? Councillor Levesque.
Thank you, Mayor Weir. I would agree with you. I guess the only concern I have is if we decide to not vote on it and it gets brought forward, the default will be to go with the shared model. So I'm curious if we don't vote on this, if we vote no to this, it will go forward with a default shared model. But I do agree with you that it should be weighted. Like you said, the impact to us personally is hardly anything. The smaller townships get hit much harder. So I would agree with the weighted model myself.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments, concerns from council? Councillor Thompson.
So basically, the way the legislation has been written, we pretty much, if we vote no or we don't vote or whatever, then the default model goes through. But that, we don't know if we can change it.
That is my
Correct.
understanding.
Correct?
I'll add, yeah, and very much so. And even, it's, in a way, there's even a, so best case is the municipalities get together, they agree this is the billing model, and we move forward. Worst case is we end up in arbitration, which costs. You know, there's an even worse model, which is if any of the municipalities say, actually, it's not just the billing, we don't like the budget at all. This is, you know, we're not paying it. We lose control completely, goes to the province, and they'll mandate what it will be. So they could come back, if we don't agree to this, the province can go back and say, actually, we're going to make it 150K, and you'll all pay equally. That's in the legislation, they're allowed to do that. And we basically lose control completely. So I think the most important thing is, and Mayor Weir mentioned this, saying that we need to keep the dialogue going between all the municipalities. We need to keep a level of agreement, and saying there are much, the best alternative to a negotiated agreement is always us talking and finding something we can all find palatable. Nobody will get 100%. As long as we're in that 70 to 90% palatable section, we should be okay. But if at any point we give up and we say, yeah, this is not working, the province takes it out of our hands and will legislate it and mandate it. And that's the worst option in my perspective.
Thank you. Bear with me for a minute.
And I just want to confirm, council has approved the budget. So the budget's been approved, so it's really the billing model that we're discussing.
Thank you. Are there any other questions, concerns, discussion items from council? Does anybody need the resolution reread? No? All in favor? Seeing none, all opposed? Motion is not carried. Thank you, sir. Robin, can you ask Councillor Tripp to come back? Thank you. Thanks, John. We will now move, excuse me, losing my voice here, which many people might appreciate. Moving on to Section 9, Protection Services Department, 9.1 Bylaw 57-2024, Admaston Bromley, Automatic Aid. Resolution, please.
The council approves bylaw 57-2024 to authorize the agreement for fire protection between the Township of Admaston Bromley and the Township of Greater Madawaska for a period of 5 years commencing January 1st, 2025 through to December 31st, 2029.
Thank you. Do we have a mover? Councillor Popke, second by Councillor Thompson. Background, please. Fire Chief.
Yeah, good afternoon. So we've had this agreement since 2004. We're going to hopefully keep moving forward with it. It covers Whalen Road, Mount St. Patrick Road, and English Road. So it's all the roads that Admaston Bromley has on this side of 132. The way the agreement works is we are able to still cover our own area. We send one truck to them and we cover their calls until they arrive. So.
Thank you. Any questions, comments, concerns? Councillor Thompson.
So this is a flat rate, no matter how many, if it's not used at all, that money still comes in?
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, and to date this year, we've had 3 calls in that area, so.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments, concerns? Councillor Popke.
I read somewhere that it was only even numbers that we're looking after on those 3 roads. Is that correct? Or is it like both sides?
I believe it would be both sides. It's the entire portion of the township. So.
Okay.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments, concerns? No, I just, I just think it's not only a good resolution, but it also is shared between goodwill that we're going to be available for them. And with our staff and our training, I think Admaston Bromley would be extremely excited to have our team help out there. We've got a great group of professionals that are well-rounded, so I like this. Any other questions, comments, concerns? No. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you, Chief. We will now be moving on to Section 10, Planning and Building Department, Section 10.1 Bylaw, 58-2024 Zoning Bylaw Amendment, 2406.2. Resolution, please.
The council approved bylaw 58-2024 being a bylaw to amend zoning bylaw number 28-2024 as amended to rezone part of the lands located in part of lot 16 and 17, concession 3 and 4, geographic township of Baguette from rural and environmental protection to rural, exception 54, and environmental protection to permit a reduction to the minimum lot frontage requirement for the rural zone for the lands being added to, from 45 meters to 18.2 meters.
Thank you. Do we have a mover? Councillor Levesque, second by Councillor Tripp. Junior Planner, Kristen, background, please.
So I won't dive too much into the report, but essentially this is a zoning bylaw amendment and it pertains to the lands located in part of lot 16 and 17, concession 3 and 4 in the geographic township of Baguette. So essentially this application is a condition of consent for a lot addition. The adjacent property to the subject lands that has frontage onto Upper Spruce Hedge Road is severing off a small portion, 2.14 acres of their property, and they're adding it on to the subject lands in order to provide them with some direct frontage and access to Upper Spruce Hedge Road. So currently the property is zoned rural and environmental protection, and the purpose and effect of this amendment is to essentially rezone the lands still to be environmental protection, and then we're rezoning it as well to a rural exception 54, which recognizes the reduced road frontage from 45 meters to 18.2 meters. We did have a public meeting last week on November 14th, which no comments were received. So otherwise, that's it for me. If there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Thank you. Any questions, comments, concerns from council? There are none seen. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you. We will now move on to 10.2, Local Official Plan Background Report. Resolution, please.
The council received the local official plan background report as information.
Thank you. And do we have a mover? Councillor Popke, second by Councillor Tripp. Background, please.
Yes, hello, everyone. Thank you, Mayor Weir. It's Kent Randall from EcoView here. I've got Jess Reed with me as well, in case there's some questions that I can't answer. So I'm pleased to provide or present this background report to council today. The report is related to the local OP public consultation and background review that's been conducted over the last several months. Council's, of course, well aware of the consultation events that took place back in the late summer, early fall. The report basically outlines the results of that public consultation, and this is all, of course, related to the possibility of amending the Renfrew County official plan to include specific policies that would be related just to Greater Madawaska. And as you'll note in the report, it provides a policy context, so basically explains sort of the main components of the current official plan and what they mean for Greater Madawaska, and basically a summary of what sort of development is permitted now in the context of the current policy, and then as well as a section that summarizes options for the township moving forward in terms of what the township may want to do pertaining to amending the official plan and providing site or township specific policies within the county official plan. In terms of the public consultation, just to provide a brief summary, you'll note in the report, and I'm sure council's all the members have gone over it, that the sentiment among the public generally that we found, and this was done through surveys and of course the open houses that every member of council attended, at least one of them, generally that the people want to see development occur within the township. They just want to see it occur in certain places and appropriate places, and I think that's generally the sentiment that we receive from most people. As I pointed out, there were surveys that in addition to the open houses, the surveys were sent to residents, staff, and council. Overall, response rates to the surveys were good. We got 47 surveys that were completed, and that is a lot. I mean, it might not sound like a lot, but for something like this that is a lot. And there was some good information that we took from the surveys and from the open houses as well. They were fairly well attended. And I do want to make that note, because typically these sorts of processes don't bring out a lot of people. So we were happy with the attendance and the response. So in terms of the options moving forward in the report, we did provide 5 options. The first one being sort of the status quo, the do nothing option, and then the other ones being various levels of amendments to the Renfrew County OP. So we've tried to lay out sort of the pros and cons associated with each option. Generally, when it comes down to it, the options 2 to 4 can really be sort of taken either individually or combined. So they can be a la carte, I guess, if you put it that way, or they can be combined because one focuses on providing additional policies for the rural area, while the other focuses on the village of Calabogie and identifying additional settlement areas. And so they can be taken together or done separately. And really, it doesn't necessarily have to be those options as well. We can sort of go down the road of sort of a scope of work where we're dealing with developing rural policies and village community policies, for instance. And however those turn out through the process is up to the residents and is up to council. So we didn't provide a specific recommendation as to what to do from us. We would be looking to council to sort of provide guidance in that respect. But we hope that this is a good place to start the discussion as to what to do next. And I'm certain that council has questions and we'd be happy to answer.
Thank you. Any questions, comments, concerns? Councillor Thompson.
Hi, thank you. It's good to know that's a good turnout, because I was concerned about that. Or not just the turnout, the surveys, but when you think about the population here and the number of people that are that deeply into the mechanics of what we're trying to do here, so I guess that is good. And we did get some good comments. What I'd like to ask is, between when this was started, this process was started, and this report now, the provincial policy statement, there were some changes there that affect the way we'll go forward. Can you talk about how that might affect Renfrew County's official plan and changes we might need to do to it?
Yeah, certainly, and it's a good question. And through the mayor to Councillor Thompson, as you pointed out, in October the provincial planning statement is put into full force and effect. It replaced the provincial policy statement, and the primary changes that would affect a place like County of Renfrew and specifically Township of Greater Madawaska are really related to the rural policies as well as the settlement area policies. So the biggest change with settlement area policies are that municipalities can, or anybody for that matter, can expand settlement areas or change the boundaries of settlement areas without a municipal comprehensive review. And what that means is that in years past or in previous iterations of the provincial policy statement, if I had a, let's say, settlement area like Calabogie, if I wanted to expand it to include more land, I would have to do that. I could only do that through a comprehensive review of the official plan. So comprehensive reviews only take place every 5 or 10 years, and they involve a land needs assessment. They involve a very intensive process, public consultation, et cetera, et cetera. And ultimately, the plan has to be approved by MMAH. And so it's a fairly lengthy process. It's a process that every municipality has to undertake that has an official plan. Now, if you wanted to expand a settlement area, if I wanted to expand the village of Calabogie, for instance, I could do that simply through an official plan amendment. I could amend the official plan. I don't have to wait for a municipal comprehensive review process. It could be initiated by a private developer or a private landowner through an application for amendment. Could be initiated by a municipality, just like any amendment under Section 22 of the Planning Act. So that's certainly a big change. And that factors into, and as we noted in the report, it factors into the settlement area discussion. In terms of what the township may want to do with their current settlement areas or what they want to do with future settlement areas. So that's a big thing. The other thing is that the rural policies have changed in terms of the permitted uses, and specifically the section pertaining to residential development in rural areas. The PPS is more permissive than it was. It doesn't say rural lot creation, limited rural lot creation. It now simply says residential development, provided it can be serviced. So that's a big change, although I don't necessarily see that as impacting Renfrew County's OP as much, because of Renfrew County is already fairly permissive when it comes to rural residential development. But certainly there's nothing in there that would prevent that from continuing to occur. So those, I would say, are the main ones. There's some smaller changes here and there, but I think those would be the ones that would reverberate the most. And certainly the settlement area one is a big thing.
Thank you. Any other questions? Councillor Thompson.
Thank you. Does it also, like if we say option one, we don't do anything, we don't make any changes, and you said the downside is it could take up to 3 years for Renfrew County to change, is there anything that, looking at what the people have said they want, which is more multi-use, not just residential, more businesses, et cetera, in our settlement areas, and less straight residential. Is there any of that can happen at with the existing OP just because of the change to the PPS?
Through the mayor, it's not necessarily with the changes to the PPS. That could be done now in terms of stronger language and stronger policy. I don't think that there's necessarily anything in the PPS, the new PPS that compels municipalities to do that. But there's certainly the framework is certainly there to provide additional policies that emphasize a mix of land use in Calabogie or in specific areas within Calabogie. That's there now, and that's what we try to emphasize with the various options, that you could go down that road if you wanted to be more specific with Calabogie, have a secondary plan established for Calabogie, set out where you want things to occur, and emphasize mixed uses in certain areas. That's there now. So the new PPS doesn't necessarily prompt that. What the new PPS certainly does, though, is that it prompts the county to have to update their plan to ensure that there's consistency with the new PPS. So they have to go through that consistency exercise, which will require them to update it. So that could be where the township could piggyback, and that was the 3 years that you referred to.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments, concerns from council? Councillor Levesque, if you have your hand up, you're in a really tiny screen right now, so speak up. I can't see you. I'll take
I did have a question or two.
Okay.
But thank you.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead.
Thank you for this great report. It's very extensive. It took a while to go through it. I went through it a couple of times. Just a couple of questions and more curiosity. The private stakeholder group meeting that you had post the other open houses, there was some discussion around infrastructure improvements. What do they consider as infrastructure? Because that's a big word, right? I mean, it could mean anything.
Yeah, so through the mayor to Councilor Levesque. So yeah, you're right. It could mean anything. I think the main concern that we found in that meeting was servicing, right? So, of course, Calabogie doesn't have municipal sanitary and water, right? So, which is a big limiting factor. It's a limiting factor with any settlement area that in that respect. So, that I think was the big thing, was that the limitations being that we cannot create a viable residential development in the village without having lots of certain size. Otherwise, once they get to a certain size, and we have to have private, because the private servicing is compelling us to do that, that we're limited, right? So that, I think that's what was meant by that, the infrastructure limitations. And we certainly got a lot of comments about lot sizes, not being able to have flexibility with lot sizes because lot standards are so high in the Renfrew County OP. And with, that they are justified in that sense, in that you typically have to have a larger lot size to have your septic and well. You don't want interference, you don't want negative impacts to the groundwater, et cetera. But they wanted, what the stakeholders wanted was flexibility with those sizes, because you can introduce different types of systems, like tertiary systems, that don't require that space and don't create that groundwater interference that you would with the typical class 4 bed and that sort of thing. So, and the Renfrew County OP doesn't necessarily allow for that to happen. And certainly, and I should point out, now that I'm thinking of it, is that the PPS, another big change with the PPS that will impact that is that the previous PPS required in settlement areas, in rural settlement areas, so areas that don't have sanitary and water, that you can only service privately in situations where there's infilling or rounding out. So those are specific areas where you could actually do that. So the new PPS doesn't have that restriction. So you could create multiple lots within hamlets without any sort of, it doesn't have to be infilling or rounding out. So that's another advantage, and that's something that could be an advantage to Calabogie, and that's certainly from what we heard from those stakeholders, that seemed to be a big limiting factor.
Okay, thank you, because that was going to bring me to my other question around the water and sewer comments. But obviously, that's going to take in a more highly dense village like Calabogie compared to some of the more rural villages. It would take a lot more planning to determine how that would be laid out. It'd be a multi-year phased-in approach, I'm sure.
Right, and you're talking about just an overall picture of that. Yeah, and we've had discussions too, and I should point out, we didn't include it in the report, but we have had discussion with the township's engineering consultant about what that would look like. It's extremely expensive and extremely difficult to do that, especially in an existing area. But I will point out that there's always emerging technologies, especially with sanitary. And just this week, I met with a company that is working on something like that that's fairly new to Ontario, and it could be, one of those things that could change the game in terms of servicing hamlets in rural areas. Communal systems or systems that can service a number of units where you can have way more lots without interference with groundwater and that kind of thing. So it's something that's evolving, and you're right, it would be a higher level discussion down the road.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any supplemental, Jeff, before you go back to a little tiny screen? Okay.
I can see okay.
Any questions, comments, concerns from council? Councillor Thompson?
Thank you for the presentation. It was very good and very thorough. I know I'd need a few years to really understand everything, so thank you for that. I'm wondering about, this is probably a question for you, Renee, about next steps. Will there be, this is a presentation, and then at what point do we make decisions? Like, what happens after this?
So our plan is going into the new year. We'll be scheduling a special council meeting to have more of a working session where we're discussing what are the options, what does it look like for the Township of Greater Madawaska. Our planner will be working through that and leading the discussions, but it'll be more of a tabletop discussion to see where we want to head with this.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments, concerns from council? No, I have just a quick question, and it's just in relation to community improvement plans. Under section 4.6, and you have 4.6.1.1. You just have it in red. Interpretation and implementation is in red, and I'm just wondering, is it in red because there's been changes to the interpretation and the implementation, or is it just the title's that color?
It's because the title's that color. That heading level is red. Maybe we might want to change that. I think because we had another red section that to really highlight something. I think that was in the Renfrew County section. So no, that's just simply the heading.
Okay, that's what I saw in the other one that was all red, and that there was some highlight. And when I got to this one, I went, well, I looked at the old one and I looked at this one, and I didn't see any difference. So I was trying to get some clarity. So thank you.
One of our staff worked extensively on our new branding, our new template. I'll have to give him that news. I don't know if he's going to like it.
Well, I apologize, but at least I cleared up my question that there isn't a change. Okay. Any other questions, comments, concerns from council? No. Well, thank you so much for this. This is an information item, and thanks for the presentation. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. We'll now move on to section 11.1, supporting municipality of Tweed's call for federal government AMO CCBF agreement. Resolution, please.
So the Council of the Township of Greater Madawaska support the Corporation of the Municipality of Tweed's call to the federal government to provide a supplement to the allocations provided to municipalities under the AMO CCBF agreement for 2024 to 2028 for the same amount that was allocated, effectively doubling the allocation for those years.
Thank you. Do we have a mover? Councillor Levesque, second by Councillor Popke. Background, please. I believe this is our Treasurer, Jen.
Good afternoon. So on September 18th, the Township received a request from the Corporation of the Municipality of Tweed to support their call to the federal government to provide supplemental allocations provided to municipalities under the AMO CCBF agreement. The CCBF funds have been a vital source of funding for municipalities, offering permanent and stable financial support. The funding has benefited all of us as municipalities, including the Township of Greater Madawaska. However, the Township, like other municipalities, are feeling the pressure of soaring asset replacement costs with little to no corresponding revenue. Although, as shown in the report provided, the allocations are increasing slightly. However, the less than 2% annual growth falls short of effectively addressing the AMP funding gap. more significant funding increases are necessary to meet the rising demands and support the AMP program adequately. So today we bring forward this call from the township to support the municipality of Tweed.
Thank you. Any questions, comments, concerns? We had the municipality of Tweed's council meeting and their motion in our package. I assume we don't need to read through the entire whereas. Is there any questions? No. Seeing none, all in favor? That is carried. Thank you. We will now move on to section 11.2 bylaws 62-2024 short-term accommodations licensing extension resolution, please.
That council approve bylaw 62-2024 being a bylaw to amend bylaw 19-2024 to license, regulate, and govern short-term rental accommodations enforcement date from January 1st, 2025 to April 1st, 2025.
Thank you. Do we have a mover? Councillor Thompson, second by Councillor Tripp. Background, please.
So in August, we would have brought an update to council on how the implementation of the process for licensing is coming together. And I had mentioned at that time that there may be a delay in bringing the application system live. So where we're at today is that we do have the hotline, which is live. However, the application, we've been notified that it won't be live until January 2025. And then today they notified me that we'd be doing training in December. So it's looking like we'll be meeting that deadline. All we're doing is amending the bylaw to push out the enforcement date 3 months. This allows staff to be able to review applications and short-term accommodation owners to be able to submit. We have had a lot of calls and questions regarding the application process. We do have a guideline on the website where people are completing the requirements and they're just waiting for the portal to open up. So this would allow a bit of time for them to, for our staff to have a review and attend sites where needed, and then meet the enforcement date of April 1st, 2025.
Thank you. Any questions, comments, concerns, discussion items from council? There are none seen. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you. We will now move on to 13.3, 2025 Roma delegations resolution, please.
That council directs the CAO to submit the following delegation requests to the appropriate provincial ministries for the 2025 Rural Ontario Municipalities Association.
Thank you. Sorry. My apologies.
Ministry of Health. So we have Health Services Hub, a partnership. You'll see the blank for as delegate because we'll have that conversation. And Ministry of Finance, modernized hydro dam payments, and another as delegate.
Do we have a mover? Councillor Popke, second by Councillor Thompson. Background, please.
So the Roma conference will be held on from January 19th to 21st. We do have the opportunity to submit for delegations. The due date is November 28th? 27th.
5 p.m.
So I've kind of outlined a bit of the process. This is newer, I think, to me, to council. For delegation, it would be our first time going forward with this council. In this year, so I've kind of taken some comments, considered our strategic plan and our financial status to review options. In following years, I will be contacting council for delegate opportunities first and then bring it to council for consideration. So with that said, what we have here is we have two options that I've considered, and council can bring up another one if they would like. Usually you would present for 15 minutes and you have a lead. So I'm looking for a lead council member for the delegations. So the first delegation that's on the list is the Ministry of Finance for modernized hydro dam payments. So what we have is the hydro dam provides payment in lieu of taxes. So they provide payment. It's been similar for some almost 2 decades in comparison to other commercial businesses, even within our area, that when we increase taxation or there's reassessment, they increased. Hydro dam payments have not increased. So the intent here is to be a delegation at the conference to discuss having a payment that is fair and respects the taxing authority, which is us, where there's inflation, there's increases everywhere, and there's no additional payment. So this would be, the need would be, revenue generating. Our taxation here, I think revenue is just over 4 million. The payment for the hydro dam is 795,000 also. So an additional to that would be substantial for our township. The other delegation aligns with our strategic plan for improving health services. So it's to the Ministry of Health, and it's a health services hub partnership. So it's to discuss the opportunity we have with our clinic here and connections to the University of Ottawa and the local hospitals, and really asking the ministry if they'd support a partnership in the build and establishment of a health services hub within our community. So what we'd be looking at today is council to approve that you agree these delegations would be appropriate, and then assigning a delegate from council.
Thank you. Questions, comments, concerns, discussion items? Councillor Thompson.
I like this I'm not sure what the process was in past years, or if we had a process, just random. So this ties in with our strategic plan and gets focused. Anyhow, and if we pick the right people, which I know I'm not one for either of these, then we'll have more chance of success that aligns with it. So I just wanted to say that. Thank you.
Thank you. Question, Councillor Tripp.
Just to follow up on Councillor Thompson, it is about timing, and we've been to a few road conferences to date. You have one opportunity to make your first impression, so it is wise of us to have waited this long so that we can come in with something now that we really understand the lay of the land, and we have projects that are realistic and timely. So a number of municipalities would do a delegation for the sake of a delegation. Ours is very strategic and targeted, and I think our timing is right.
Thank you. Any other comments, questions, discussions from council? No, the one question I do have, and it's in regards to the modernization of hydro dam payments. I know it's under the Ministry of Finance, but does it also fall, the payment structure also fall under energy? And if so, can we have both?
So we can only choose one.
Yeah, okay.
And the Ministry of Finance is actually the one that determines the structure, I believe, that they would bring in. But there is also, when you're filling out a delegation, you have the ability to, you could submit to, I guess. So we would have the opportunity, if you wanted to submit to both ministries, and then seeing how that would, but otherwise I was heading towards the Ministry of Finance.
Okay, no, thank you. I just thought that the payments structure was under the energy, but I could be totally wrong on that. So I will take it into advisement that you've done a lot more research into it than I have. Thank you. Is there any other questions, comments? And at this time, do we want to have discussion on representation, or do we go through the resolution first?
We did the resolution, so what I would do now is, if you want to discuss the delegate, then we could add it and then reread the resolution.
Thank you. Let's take first the, although it's listed different in our documentation, let's look at the Ministry of Health Services Hub Partnership. I'd ask for council to express their desire and a little bit of background of why they think that they're appropriate. Is there anyone? Councillor Tripp.
Thank you, Mayor Weir. So I certainly have an interest in it. I've been fairly active in the strategic direction leading us down this path in terms of a renewed or an enhanced health service. And the partnership hub is a way to bring together the different areas of our community through the teaching center at the School of Family Medicine in Ottawa, the Royal Victoria Hospital, our clinic here, the new health, the health team that has come in, the Ancient Rivers, which is part of our catchment area. But we also have some interesting funding opportunities, and I think that's our message to the minister at this stage, is our community is poised for growth on a number of different levels, and growth requires a stronger base in health services, and this hub is critical to that. So the different pieces that we have to the table, I'd be quite happy in leading that conversation with the minister.
Thank you. Anyone else? None seen. Do we need a motion to approve? No. So, all right, we'll now move on to Ministry of Finance, Modernization Hydro Dam Payments. Sorry, I'm going to go back to the Health Services Hub Partnership. Do we need to say CEO, Mayor, and Councillor Tripp?
So what we would do is I'm trying to delegate a council member that leads, and then all would attend, but there's a leading point.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Now we can move on to Ministry of Finance, Modernization Hydro Dam Payments. I will put it out to council again. Anybody wish to lead this delegation? Okay. I have great interest in this myself and have done a fair bit of research on it, although I'll need to do more, obviously, because I was looking at the Ministry of Energy as well. So if there's nobody else that wants to lead the delegation, I would be more than interested in, and because I think it's, for myself, it's fascinating that the payment in lieu has not changed in some, I think 2006 was the last time that there was a change in it. So if there's no objections, I would like to lead the delegation on that. Okay, thank you.
So,
now, I was going to ask you to reread the resolution.
Perfect. The council directs the CAO to submit the following delegation requests to the appropriate provincial ministries for the 2025 Rural Ontario Municipalities Association. Ministry of Health, Health Services Hub Partnership, Councillor Tripp as delegate, and Ministry of Finance, Modernized Hydro Dam Payments, Mayor Weir as delegate.
Thank you. All in favor? So carried. Thank you. We will now move on to section 12, 12.1, Green Roads Pilot Project. Motion was brought forward by Councillor Thompson. Resolution, please.
Whereas the Federation of Canadian Municipalities has established the Green Municipal Fund, which includes new funding for a pilot project to test innovative and ambitious technologies to improve environmental outcomes, be it resolved that the council directs staff to investigate the feasibility and potential benefits of using bioresin on municipal road works.
Thank you. Do we have a mover? Councillor Tripp, second by Councillor Thompson. Background, please. Councillor Thompson.
Yeah, this was a fascinating new way of doing, what we used to call tar and chip, using oils and whatnot to kind of glue the gravel together. And you'd always have problems with potholes, and it turns out to be not a very efficient. Straight gravel is probably more efficient. And then next step would be what I would call a tar. I always forget the acronyms. It's vegetable based, and it allows, not only does it, this is why we're doing a pilot to find out all the benefits, but it allows the use of green product to glue the gravel together. But it's not like tar and chip where you have to come in with tar to fill the holes. You can just put more bioresin in and smooth it right out. So the pothole issue would be better. And apparently, if it's done to scale, it'll be less expensive. So it gives us a new possibility of a new middle between gravel and full LC? Anyhow, That's what I thought it explained. Yeah, I think it'd be good if we watch this one.
Thank you. Any questions, comments, concerns from council? Councillor Popke.
What's the, what do you call it? How long is this resin gonna last on the road, the longevity of it, compared to what we have now?
I don't have the stats, and probably that's part of the pilot, but from what I've read, it's better, it's longer, it lasts longer, but part of the reason it lasts longer is because they can patch. So, you know, where you end up so many patches on a road that your only alternative is to start over. This one, you can just put in more resin. I don't know the science behind it, but it sounds really, really good.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments, concerns, discussion items from council? I have one. So this is the pilot project is being taken place in the city of St. Catharines. And in our resolution, it says direct staff to investigate the feasibility and potential benefits of using it. I'm just wondering whether it's investigate or monitor the results of St. Catharines bio study.
Maybe it'd be best for you to ask.
In this case, reading this direction, what we would be doing is just basically doing a bit of an assessment, trying to find the information on feasibility and if it would work, and then monitoring. It would all come together.
Okay, that's just what I wanted to make sure of. Okay, is there any other questions? There are none seen. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you. We will now move on to section 12.2, redistribution of land transfer tax and GST, and the motion was brought forward by myself. Resolution, please.
The council support resolution number 333, 2024, carried on November 12, 2024, by the council of the Township of McGarry, requesting the provincial government consider redistributing a portion of the land transfer tax collected on property transactions to municipalities, and requesting that the federal government to allocate a percentage of the GST collected on property sales to municipalities, and that a copy of this resolution be forwarded to Prime Minister, Premier of Ontario, Minister of Finance, Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing, local members of Parliament, members of provincial Parliament, all municipalities in Ontario, Federation of Canadian Municipalities, and the Association of Municipalities of Ontario for their endorsement and advocacy.
Thank you. Do we have a mover? Councillor Popke, second by Councillor Levesque. Thank you. So the Township of McGarry sent this out and looking for people to support it. And basically, I'll summarize it. It's where municipalities, we're all facing infrastructure work, and the cost of all that infrastructure work is going up for bridges, roads, public transit, what have you. So the provincial government currently collects land transfer tax on property transactions in municipalities across the province. The federal government collects GST monies on those sales as well. What this resolution is looking for is the support of McGarry, I was going to say Glengarry, but McGarry, so that the distribution of those land transfer tax and GSTs will start, a portion of it will come back to the municipalities to assist in our budgets and our infrastructure. Just as a side note, this is not only brought for McGarry, it's also the town of Aurora has also put out something similar. So it's something that can be very beneficial to municipalities across the province to bring extra funding. Any questions, comments, and concerns? No? Okay then. All in favor? That's so carried. Thank you. Now moving on to 12.3, public sector salary disclosure. Motion brought forward by Councillor Thompson. Resolution, please.
The council supports the resolution passed on October 16, 2024 by the Council of North Cumberland County requesting the provincial government to update the Public Sector Salary Disclosure Act to reflect the inflation rate since 1996, and that the act be further updated so that the inflation rate is applied each year to the requirement to report public salaries, and that this resolution be forwarded to the Premier of Ontario, the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing, the Association of Municipalities of Ontario, and all Ontario municipalities.
Thank you. Do we have a mover? Councillor Thompson, second by Councillor Tripp. Background, please, Councillor Thompson.
In 1996, $100,000 was a lot of money for a salary. And since then, it's, in municipal staffing, it's nothing. But what's happened is they haven't updated it to inflation. So now it's almost like a privacy thing where almost everyone's salary is out there, because even if you're $1 over 100,000, now you're not the rich person that you would have been in 1996. But it's also causing issues with hiring and retention, because everybody's staff wages are out there. So it needs to be updated. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions, comments, concerns? No, and I think they refer to this as the sunshine list back. So, and I totally agree that if you've ever taken a look at it, back in 96, it would probably be 4 or 5 pages long. And now it's hundreds upon hundreds of pages long. So I think that's long overdue. No further questions, comments, concerns, discussion? All in favor? That is carried. Thank you. We'll now move on to 12.4, Ontario Rural Roads Safety Program. Motion brought forward by Councillor Thompson. Resolution, please.
So the council support the resolution carried on October 21st, 2024 by the Council of the Town of Blue Mountains, requesting the Government of Ontario take action to implement the Rural Road Safety Program that Good Roads has committed to lead, and that a copy of this resolution be forwarded to the Premier of Ontario, Minister of Transportation, Minister of Infrastructure, Minister of Agriculture, Minister of Rural Affairs, Association Minister of Emergency Preparedness and Response, Minister of Health, Good Roads, and all Ontario municipalities.
Thank you. Do we have a mover? Councillor Levesque, second by Councillor Popke. Background, please, Councillor Thompson.
So I'll skip to a little further down in our background. Good Roads is an organization that's proposed leading a 5-year, $183 million program that leverages our 131 years of municipal road, that's them saying, their 131 years of municipal road expertise and their industry partnerships to quickly put in place the solutions that will address some of Ontario's most dangerous roads. If you think of the cost of roads and policing in sparsely populated rural areas, for the kilometers traveled, there are more accidents on rural roads than there are per person per kilometer in the urban centers. So that's something that needs to be addressed, and I think this will be a good starting point to helping us to keep our roads safe. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions, comments, concerns from council? Councillor Popke.
I think part of the problem there's so many accidents is people, they're not familiar with the roads that they're driving. So they come out and they think they can go like bats out of hell like they normally do. Corners creep up on you pretty quick. I think people just got to be more aware when they're driving and take that into consideration. And the conditions as well. You can't do the same speeds in a snowstorm as you can in the dry summer weather.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments, concerns, discussion items from council? Councillor Thompson, on your own.
Yeah. Well, I just want to add to the background. Let's see if I can find my place. that to deal with this crisis, Good Roads has designed a multifaceted rural road safety program and has been in discussions with the Ministry of Transportation to fund it. The program would target a municipality's most dangerous roads, perform road safety audits, and install modern safety infrastructure that prevents serious injuries and saves lives. This program is designed to be cost-effective while also providing rural municipalities with a direct means for addressing risks associated with their roadways. So there's nothing going to stop people from driving too fast, especially if they're used to doing the 401 at 120. They come off the 401 and they're now in the backwoods. But this is a way of assessing some, which are our most difficult roads and what can we do to make them better. Is it signage? Is it lighting? Is it guardrails? Is it surfacing, straightening some curves, that kind of thing. So we're not expecting to ever change human behavior, but to analyze it and make it safer.
Thank you. Any further comments? There are none seen. All in favor of supporting this? That is carried. Thank you. We will now move on to 13.1 bylaw approval. Resolution, please.
Be it resolved that the following bylaw, 61-2024, be deemed read a first, second, and final time and passed by council at the regular council meeting held November 21st, 2024.
Thank you. Do we have a mover? Councillor Levesque, second by Councillor Thompson. Guess we have our background already. All in favor? Thank you. Carried. We now move on to 14.1, motion to adjourn. Resolution, please.
That the regular council meeting of November 21st, 2024 be adjourned at 4:31 p.m.
Do we have a mover? Councillor Thompson, second by Councillor Levesque. All in favor to adjourn? That is so carried. Thank you very much. Be safe and enjoy your evening.